Welcome to The Life of Hair. My name is James Atkinson. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Now, in this week's episode, we have got a haircut that is absolutely bang on the money in terms of emerging trends. This haircut for me is really going to take off this year. You've read the description, so you've got a fair idea what we're going to be doing today. So I won't talk about it in too much detail in the intro. Let's get straight on with the video. But before we do that, a massive thank you to everybody who is a Patreon. It is hugely appreciated. The support is overwhelming from you guys. And if you want to become a Patreon of The Life of Hair, then you can drop down to the description and you can join up. If you want to know any more details, then do drop me a message on any social media platform you feel fit. Now, another thing I just want to let you know about is Wednesday night, 9 p.m. GMT or BTS or whatever it is right now. We are doing a live, myself and Paul Watts Hair. And this week on Wednesday, we'll be live on Paul's channel. So do make sure that you head over there to join in with that. We are going to be talking all things colour theory. So get your questions ready. Cannot wait to have you join in. Okay. Let's get on with today's video. Okay, so this is what we have got to start with. A lot of hair here to deal with. Now, it was a mullet previously, but this is lockdown grow out. The haircut that was done previously wasn't done by me, but wants a similar vibe from the shape, quite heavy, quite triangular, not dissimilar to the way that I have my hair, but also wants all that extended length down the back to create this mullet type effect. So I think mullets are really blowing up on social media at the moment, and I think they might become quite a trend. And well, long live the mullet, in my opinion. I really like the mullet haircut. I know it has redneck connotations, but well, I think we can get past that in 2021. So we start this haircut very simply by putting just one guide that runs from the front to the back. Super simple profile section straight down the center back, and this is really going to determine the whole haircut in terms of the length on the top. Now I'm cutting the top first because I really want to get a feel for how much hair I'm leaving through the top of the head, and I'm going to then cut in my graduation through the sides and disconnect the back separately. But there is just an awful lot of hair around the crown area that you can see now, and that was one of the biggest problems with this haircut. Previously cut more like a shag type of haircut, short to long, lots of weight built up in the crown, and it was quite difficult to style. So wanted to create something that was a bit more head hugging, a bit more sleek in terms of profile, and that was going to last a little bit longer than the previous haircut had. So it was about creating that profile section to really define the whole haircut. And of course, if you cut your guide sections straight off the block and you're very diligent about how you cut those guide sections, and you're very careful about the lengths that you're choosing, you can really have one very solid guide that defines the whole haircut. So that is exactly what we did in this instance. It's about creating that one piece of hair that travels from front to back that we can split into two sections in just a second. So we've got a piece of hair at the back and a piece of hair at the front that we can really work to as our guide. And you'll note that as I'm cutting this section, you know, I'm leaving it to fall naturally on the head. I want to sort of feel how it's going to look by just kind of letting it be, not combing it back down flat, just letting it rest. I'm quite happy with that length, so I'm going to split the head now from pretty much just about an inch behind the highest point and down to the back of the ear, where the hair will change density. Obviously there's about 50% more hair in the back than there is in the front, and we're going to utilize this to great effect with this specific haircut. Once we've split the hair down the behind the ears from just behind the highest point, we're then going to simply follow the shape that we created first off. We're going to split that shape into two, and that is going to be our traveling guide for the entire top section of this haircut. Really super simple, super straightforward, really easy to follow. And if you just make sure that you take nice, clean, precise sections, this haircut and every haircut is so much easier. So what we're doing as well here is we're elevating the hair straight up from the head shape. Really, really simple technique at this point, and a very, very effective shape, just creating that slight concave towards the front to prevent a really kind of heavy, bulbous curl pattern right at the front. Now this haircut was obviously cut similar to a shag last time, and that's why we were moving a lot more hair from around the crown area. This is going to be lighter and easier to manage, and as this haircut grows out, it will very much grow into maybe 2 or 3 different haircuts, as opposed to the very heavy shape that we had previously. So it's really important that we think about these things as we go through the haircut. How can we better and improve the client's lifespan of the haircut? It's something that I'm always thinking about when I'm cutting hair, is how will this hair grow? Is it beneficial for me to alter the shape for a longer lasting haircut? Obviously by consulting the client. We're going to talk a bit about that at the end of this video. Actually, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the process, not just cutting the shape, but also keeping the client in the loop throughout the process of cutting their hair. And this way we're going to get somebody that is truly satisfied with what you've done, because they've had some say along the way, obviously guided by your expertise, but they've had some say in the finished result. And you've given the opportunity to change their mind and maybe do something a little bit different that they possibly didn't think of, or they don't like the look of while they're sitting there. It's better to fix it right there and then than them go away, be dissatisfied and never return. So very simply, all of the top sections are cut now. Every section was pulled up to a square line and cut square. Super, super simple. Now through the sides, we're going to use horizontal graduation. So we're going to take our first section of about 1 centimeter horizontal line just above the ear, and we're going to pull that section straight out from the head shape. Every subsequent section is then going to be pulled down onto the first section. We're going to leave it very loose and not sharp around the ears, very deliberately, to emphasize this kind of lived in, undone type of vibe that the client wanted to go for. She didn't want harsh shaved she didn't want harsh shaved sides. Harsh shaved, like Sean Connery. She didn't want harsh shaved sides. She wanted it to be really fluid and really easy for it to come out in that triangular shape, very full, very heavy on top. I'm not sure whether she came to me because I've got a similar haircut or as this was just by circumstance, but I was very pleased to be cutting this particular style. And horizontal graduation is one of those things that lots of hairdressers are quite fearful of and do avoid doing horizontal graduation quite a lot, or it's something that they're very under practiced at. But it is a fantastic technique to have in the bag. Getting this type of graduation onto this client's head in a vertical finger angle would be nearly impossible. So it is well worth practicing these techniques that are a little bit trickier. Maybe do it on a mannequin, maybe do it on your friend. Do it somehow, practice it some way. Yes, it's not easy in the beginning, but with time and practice, it's like anything. You will learn to nail it. And once you've got it in the bag and you can just pull it out whenever, there are so many use cases for horizontal graduation. It is really one of those must-have techniques. Very, very simple here. Each subsequent section is pulled down onto the previous section, and every section is pulled down onto the first section that we pulled out from the head horizontally. It really is very, very straightforward indeed, and one of those haircuts that actually, when you look at it, looks way more complicated than it is in reality. And so I really do recommend that you get practicing with your horizontal graduation if it's something that you've always struggled with. So super simple, we just repeat exactly the same steps on the opposite side as we did on the first right hand side. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit more detail about horizontal graduation. The reason that we pull the first section straight out from the head, when we elevate the hair, as I'm sure you'll well know, we create layers. Now this first section needs to be layered to prevent it looking like a hard bob shape. So make sure that first section is elevated straight out. Each subsequent section that you then take wants to be about 1 centimetre in length. You want a reasonable amount of tension on the hair. Higher tension is better when you're trapping it between your fingers, because it tends to then expand outwards in a triangular formation, which always looks much better when you get to cut the hair under tension. When you do this without tension, it really doesn't give you that expanded triangular shape in quite the same way as it would if you held the hair tight in between your fingers. And then it really is as simple as taking every subsequent section after that at 1 centimetre spacings and pulling the hair down onto the very first section, making sure you can clearly see your guide, keeping the hair under reasonable tension and cutting a square line. I know you guys can do it, so make sure that you get some practice in and then take it to the shop floor with you. You will thank me in the long run, I can promise you. Last section now, coming through this top section, and because we've put the layers in the top of the hair first, we will run out of hair to cut on the sides, because the top layers are short enough not to meet all the way to that perimeter section without running out of hair just above the parietal ridge. So we're cutting off the dust at this point. Once we've done this, have a little feel. Make sure you like the way the hair's sitting and falling. And if you're completely satisfied, then you can move on to the back. So what we're going to do now is very similar thing to what we did previously with our section. We're going to then take a center section that we cut to start with, split it into two, and we are going to cut from the high point of the head down towards the back. This is simply to remove some of the length and some of the bulk away from that crown area where the haircut was previously extremely long. This will help give us a more head-hugging feel to this shape, and we're going to really improve the way that the crown area behaves. It's not going to be so flat and heavy, and she's going to be able to get some more curl and movement into the shape. Now I'm going to leave all of the exterior length on this particular look because I want to kind of play around with it as we go through the technique. But it is really important that obviously as we go through these techniques, if you do something like this and you leave extended length, you can say to your client, don't worry, there's no rhyme or reason to this specifically. Or you say to them, I'm just leaving this length for experimental purposes. I'll probably end up cutting it off later. As long as you keep them in the loop, you know, they will go with it. You know, sometimes I do things that literally have no rhyme or reason specifically. It's just for the choice of being able to cut it off afterwards. I just get into the moment and think, right, I'll disconnect that perimeter and I'll come along and cut it off afterwards. Or I'll just experiment with a whole new hairline or a whole new shape in the back for them and give them the choice of having something different as I go. So if you give your clients that choice, that bespoke haircut that really does feel like you are making something new, something fresh for them each and every time, they really will love you for it. So don't be afraid to leave bits of hair, knowing that you can just cut them off later. So many hairdressers, I feel, want to create the entire look in one go because that's how they feel that they should perform. But in reality is that if you do that, you tend to then just cut the same haircut every single time, which is fine. If your clients want the same haircut every single time, then please just follow the same procedure all the way through. But if you want to make changes and tweaks and evolve and keep things interesting, not only for the client, but for you as the stylist, then do make sure that you are aware of the sections of hair that you could leave behind that could improve the haircut. So we're still working through our layers on this top section, just taking that really long hair off the crown area and round towards the occipital bone, just to make sure the hair is nice and fluid throughout the shape. So really loving this haircut at this point, and actually a little freeze frame, because at this point, if it was up to me, I would have left the haircut as it was. I loved this shape just like this. But we had a little conflab with my client, and she wanted something that was a little less weighty and had less length in the back. So what we then decided to do was to connect into the side sections, and that's exactly what I'm doing here now. I've taken a vertical section that mirrors the hairline at the back straight down into the nape area, and I've pulled the hair straight out from the head shape. I've then cut a line that's still short to long, extending the length towards the perimeter at the back, but making sure that each subsequent section that is still around 1 centimeter in width is then over directed to that first section. Over direction, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, will create length in the opposite direction that you pulled the hair in. So if we pull the hair from the left hand side to the right hand side, the hair will be longer in the left hand side than it will the right hand side. So remember, pull the hair right, the hair goes long left. Pull the hair left, the hair goes long to the right. In this particular instance, I'm pulling the hair over towards the exterior outline of the hair, and therefore that means I'm going to build up more weight and length towards the center back. Now, I did this very deliberately because I wanted the back to have a similar kind of vibe to the point where I felt like I really wanted to stop. But obviously my client wanted something that was a little bit shorter, a little bit longer lasting and easier to maintain to start with. And so I very much feel like, you know, I'm obviously going to go with what the client wants. It's her hair, but I also want to create something that I find visually pleasing and something that I can be proud to say that I cut, should somebody ask. So it's very much about working out a happy medium at this point between what the client has suggested and what I'm about to do. And so it's just a very simple process now of taking those vertical sections and over directing them to that very first section. And we're going to do exactly the same thing on the opposite side. Talk to you about a few different details on the opposite side, so do hang on for that. And also I want to talk to you about kind of consultation and process changes a little bit after that. So follow the journey through to the end of the video, because there are some golden nuggets in there to help you kind of satisfy your clients who maybe do change their mind halfway through their haircut. So in terms of technique in this particular instance, as you can see, vertical sections, clean sections, pulling the hair out from the head. And then my final combing, I comb from the underneath and pull the hair towards me. Now, this is to ensure that I pull the hair straight out from the head shape square to follow that line all the way down into the nape area. I don't want to create over direction where I'm pulling the hair away from natural fall at this point. I want these sections cut with natural fall in mind. Really important to me at this stage of the haircut. And when we take our subsequent sections, we've got to be very diligent to make sure that we over direct to the point at which we cut that first section. Many times when I'm helping people learn to cut hair or learn to use over direction, you get lots of over direction where they've over directed further than the first section that they cut. If we think about it, the back is very similar. We've taken vertical sections and over directing them to the perimeter, building up weight towards the center back. So in terms of balance, a very similar look indeed. Really good way to think about these concepts as well, because they are not all that different. Although this isn't horizontal graduation, this is more of a layered shape, but the graduation is therefore come about by the fact that we're over directing. Over direction does create graduation to a certain degree. That's a good way of thinking about horizontal graduation as well, is that effectively all you're doing is over directing the hair to one stationary point that is horizontal, which may help some of you understand horizontal graduation. Final couple of sections here on the back here. Final couple of sections on the back, and again, these techniques are all about repetition and ease of use. There's nothing that I want to show you that is, especially when we're looking at it from a consumer standpoint, everything that I want to show you is about usability. Yeah, we can cut haircuts that are very, very technical and difficult, but obviously the reality is that I only want to show you stuff that you can really use 95% of the time. So here you see me having a further chat about the back to my client, making sure that she's satisfied with the changes that I've made. Obviously, I've not said to her that I'm going to over direct all the sections out to the edges to leave more weight in the centre back to emphasise the mullet look. She wanted a mulleted look, not a super long mullet like she had cut previously, but she wanted a little bit more a controlled mullet. So the reality of that was that I really needed to make sure that she was 100% satisfied at that point in time, and that if there was any changes that she wanted to make, it was right at that point before we dried the hair, so that I can make those changes so she can leave completely satisfied. In terms of drying this look, super easy, curl cream in the hair when it's damp, use the diffuser bag, and I am touching the hair in this particular instance because I don't mind having a bit of flyaway texture to it. I don't mind if it's a bit kind of spiky and not perfectly curled. So I would generally advocate that you don't touch curly hair when you're blow drying it, but in this particular instance, because of the nature of the haircut and the sort of the way that it looks and the kind of loose nature of the perimeters, then yeah, touching the hair. And here we have the finished result. Shorter around the edges, longer through the back, more controlled than the previous haircut, less weight in the crown. Nothing wrong with the previous haircut, just didn't grow out as well as the client was hoping. So was looking for a similar vibe, but was going to grow out and last a bit better than she'd had previously. So I hope this had satisfied her need for, creating that new shape and having that haircut that very much was a mullet, is a mullet, but is also in the realms of something that isn't too kind of edgy and forward. Because sometimes people want to experiment with creative haircuts and they don't want the full Monty, the length trailing down their back. They want to create something that is a little bit safer, and I think this was obviously a good halfway house in this particular instance. She was very pleased. I really enjoyed cutting it. Obviously I'm a big curly hair fan, so to cut a curly haired mullet was a lot of fun, and I hope you've taken away some great tips and tricks from this particular episode. Even if you don't replicate this particular style, hopefully you can use it in your hair cutting at another point. And until next time, my friends, thank you so much for your continued support. Hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know what you thought about the video down in the comment section. Until next week, have a good one.